I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for all of us to jump on board with greeting people as they come into our county, which is the opportunity that the OUT team is providing for all the rest of us. So when we talk about leadership, in our leadership meeting this week, we have a meeting of our up, in, and out teams, right? So up team, relationship with God; in team, relationship with other believers; out team, relationship with our community. We all know this. I say this nonstop. So the point of those teams is not to go do all those things, right? We're all supposed to be doing all those things. The point of those teams is to use their gifts and their natural inclination toward that thing to drive the rest of us whichever direction they're going, right? So the in team is all about pastoral care, and they're like, remember birthdays, remember we should honor people. We're like, right, somebody's having a baby or something, we should do something for that. It's not the way I naturally think, so I rely upon those people who are super pastoral to drive us, but it's still my responsibility to do it, right? The up team, same thing, driving us toward the Lord, and the out team are the ones who are behind us, gently prodding us with cattle prods and branding sticks saying, get out, get out. So we don't want that to be an out team thing where they're the only ones who go. That's not the point. It is supposed to be all of us joining together and saying, I'd have never thought of that. How'd they put that together? But they did, and so I'm going to go. So find out how you can help and what you can be a part of. I would say figure out the most outrageous thing that's going to require the most capital from you, time, energy, resource, and then work your way back if you absolutely can't do it. All right? Let's start with the most that we can do and kind of work our way back instead of like, oh, maybe I could give like $5 toward cookies or something. Like, let's really try, because the people that we meet coming into our county, they may not know it as soon as they get here, but they're looking for family, right? And we've got a great family. So make sure that you are a part of that. The other part tonight about mission that we want to encourage you about is we are doing a whole series this month on our global mission. So we are always talking about getting outside our church, right? And being Christ followers, like outrageous, sacrificial, normal people. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole time out in our community. But we can also maybe forget that there's a world out there. And so if anything, we might tend that way a little. I know there are Christians, there are churches that people never think about reaching out until you talk about sending money overseas somewhere. We don't want to do that. But we also don't want to forget that there are places out there. So every week in November, we are going to be highlighting some other part of the world and giving you a snapshot of what life looks like for people there, partially so that we'll give, especially during this holiday season, because people give a lot to ourselves and our kids and our people, right? Someone the other day, I was in a store and someone was talking about a gift that they were giving to a sister-in-law that they didn't really like, and it was $250 for Christmas. And I was like, wow, you could feed like that entire orphanage that we're just about to talk to right now for that. You don't even like her. Spend $25 and give the rest of it to somebody who needs it. So especially as we're talking about buying extraordinarily expensive random things that nobody cares about or needs at Christmas, we want to be thinking about the rest of the world. And so tonight we're going to highlight India. So go ahead and put that picture up of Raj and Teha Bidragunta. Okay, so these are folks who are doing a ministry right outside of a village in Andhra Pradesh, and there's an insert about this. So if you pull out of your bulletin, this is why I made sure most of you could have one. There's some over on that table and over on the back if you didn't get one. On one side is employee housing outreach, and on the other side is giving opportunities for India. Okay? And I want you to look at this as we go. These are not missionaries, okay? Missionaries are people who are from another country and they go to another place because they feel called to those people, and it's beautiful and wonderful and we should support a ton of them. These are native people. They're Indians, and that's usually what missionaries are trying to get to anyway, is we're going to go in here and start something and then turn it over to the people who should be in charge of it anyway, because they speak the same language and they're from here and they're going to continue this after we leave, etc. We already have an opportunity to support those folks in these guys because that's where they're from. They just started noticing all around them as they were preaching the gospel in their village that there are a lot of poor people, right? And so one of the disadvantages to that, one of the repercussions, is that a lot of children either had been orphaned or they had been abandoned. And the reason they'd been abandoned is because their parents just didn't have enough money to support them. And so at some point they had to decide which of their 3 or 4 kids they were going to feed, and they had to leave behind the others. And so Raj and Teja started just pulling people into their home And if you show that next picture, this is the children. This is their children now, about 40 kids in this orphanage, about half girls and half boys. They are, all the girls sleep in one room and all the boys sleep in another. And when I say one room, I don't mean one that looks like this, okay? I've seen pictures of their mats on the ground lined up side by side. They're always smiling, they're always happy, and they're always praying for us. Because I don't know if you knew this, but our church supports them, and our family supports them, and they have pictures of us where every single time they walk in and out of their building through the hallway, they pray for us. These children are praying for us tonight. Well, they might be asleep. I don't know what time it is. It's like 11 and a half hours. It's something really screwy. And so they're wonderful. They're praying for us all the time. You see this banner? They made that for us for some random extra thing we sent. Like nothing, just a little extra for something. And they made this banner for us and took pictures of them like blowing kisses to us, and just went way out of their way to say thank you. They're wonderful, wonderful kids. And then if you can go to the next slide, this is a church that they have started. It's in the same building. They do everything out of the same space. They minister also to a leper colony outside of their village, and their goal is to adopt lepers the same way they've adopted children, to make sure that they're cared for, and not just that they have what they need physically and by food, but they actually have relationship, right? Because nobody wants to be near them, nobody wants to touch them, nobody wants to speak to them, nobody wants to give value. And so to be a family around them that would give them value, especially with all these little children, is pretty beautiful. This is the place that we're going to in August. Elements Church is taking a trip to India, and we are going to see these guys. So already be thinking about how you can make that happen. But meanwhile, we are supporting them. If you ever have extra, and you're like, I don't need another hoodie. I don't know. What do we wear here? Another hoodie, another pair of whatever. I had 20 extra bucks this week. Can I send that to India? Come tell me, and I would be happy to take that and send them on to them. It is unbelievable what people in other nations can do with that, and that seemed like a small amount, but it's not. And for Christmas, if you look on this little insert, they have some needs, and these are needs that they have a lot of times, some of them, but this is just a great time to ask because everybody's feeling generous, right? So $20, if you have 20 extra dollars this month, $20 will buy a new outfit for one of these girls or boys. And this is not like the number 24 shirt that Cadence has in his closet. This is the one set of clothes that they're going to wear. They're probably going to wear 2 sets every day for the next year. So $20 can clothe one of these kiddos. $100 buys a Christmas cake, and when they do something like this, they expand it to the entire village. So it's not that they just feed those little kids that you just saw. They say, anybody who wants to, come eat. And they have a celebration because a lot of people can't do that. The Christmas meal that they want to serve is chicken and lamb biryani. I heard some folks went to Nepal restaurant today. You could have pretty easily, for $8.95 or something, gotten lamb biryani, maybe $10.95 if they're in Summit County. They only get this once a year, if ever. This is a delicacy. And so for us to be able to give money, to give them such a treat and have their face light up, we had a little bit of extra money come in, and so we bought them the Christmas tree. And I got to tell you, immediately he was like, thank you. Like, we already have money for the Christmas tree. We can at least do something for Christmas. So I'm just telling you, right on here, there is a list, and some of them are very small, and some of them are larger. I have a little place on the bottom that says, I commit to giving blank money in November. And if you want to designate it for one of those things, go for it. If you don't, I'll just put it on and we'll just send them a big offering at the end of the month. We're trying to raise a bunch of money for them by the end of November. So if you came and you didn't come with like a checkbook or whatever, you can always give online. Instructions are on the back of the bulletin on how to give online. But you have to designate it that it's for them, because otherwise I just think it's your normal tithe and offering. Now, you do have to keep giving your tithe and offering here, because our church will also give money, and I don't know really what I can give if you take money away from that. So it has to be on top of that. That's the point, is generosity to help these folks from around the world. It breaks the power of money and stuff, right? And if you've ever gotten into the kind of rut where you're like, man, I guess I can really buy a latte whenever I want right now. I can really I remember us being we weren't poor, we just were pretty penny pinchers when we were in Missouri, and I would go get a chai from Starbucks like once a month, and that was like a big, big treat for me. Now it's like, like I feel sometimes like, man, I'm so undisciplined now, I don't even enjoy it as much, it's not the same. If you want to take something like that, if you don't have extra necessarily, but you say, I can get a latte 3-4 times a week, every day, if I want. Take that and give it. You start sticking that money in a jar. By the end of the month, you can have a little hefty sum that we can send. However you want to do it, give. And even though the rest of the month we'll be talking about Guatemala, Cambodia, Kenya, this is where we really want to put our dollars. Now, you can give anywhere you want. I mean, it's between you and God. But if you're just like, well, I could go anywhere, I really want these kids to have a great Christmas. And our kids are going to have a great Christmas. They've already started wrapping stuff because we put up our Christmas tree yesterday. And they've been like grabbing stuff from around the house and wrapping it. Aspen came in, I don't know if any of you saw, with a little thing. We got that in Alaska last year or 2 years ago. It just was laying around the house. And it actually started thinking like, wow, I don't really think of us as people who accumulate a lot of stuff, but they're wrapping presents from things they're finding around their own house. We have way too much stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can find Christmas presents for yourself without us going and buying them. You know what I'm saying? So that's most of us. So I'm just encouraging you to give, and this is a great place to do it. If you have questions about it or you want it to go to a certain place, just tell me that and I'll send it on to him and it will go where you want it to. One thing I do know about this man, he has a lot of integrity. His family is unbelievable. They're kind, they're generous, they're sacrificing. Almost every week he sends me a request to pray. Somebody is very sick, and his little son, he's not even 2 years old, he's been very sick before, and every time he says, we're praying for you, we're praying for you, we're praying for your church. So these are good people that we want to support. So as we are talking about our global mission, it has definitely got me thinking about the lost. And this is kind of what Eric was even saying before about the employee housing folks and whoever comes around. So we have a mentor friend who said several years ago, it's probably 10 years ago now, the first time we heard him say this. He said, I don't like thinking about unbelievers as the lost. I like actually thinking about them as the sought. Because when we think about someone who's lost, they are kind of hopeless, kind of wandering around. I think of a sheep, since we talked about sheep last week, wandering around on a hillside in the middle of fog, confused, upset, lonely, feeling very unsafe most of the time. But when we think of those same people as the sought, we know that there's someone who values them. And even if they're not found yet, they're being looked after, right? They're being pursued. Someone is coming after them. And so tonight I was going to talk about from Luke 15, the sought. When really I started reading through the stories in Luke 15, it's really less about the people who are being sought. It's really less about the lost things as it is the one who's finding them, the pursuer, the seeker. And so tonight we're talking about God as the seeker. Now there's a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called The Seeker. I think this every time. This is not what we're talking about. Okay? It's like Seeker of Truth. Like Eric got me on sci-fi business. This makes me think about like he's seeking us out of all the things that he could be after. God doesn't need anything, right? I mean, sometimes for some reason we think he does, but he doesn't need anything. He doesn't need us. He is completely self-sufficient in himself, especially in the community of the Godhead, this perfect family almost. He doesn't need us, but he wants us, which is kind of crazy. And so he comes and seeks after us. He comes and looks for us. And we find some really beautiful imagery of that in Luke 15. So we're going to read through the chapter and kind of pull out some things that we can be thinking about, not just for us, for gratitude, if we have been found, but also as we think about people out there in the world who haven't been yet, right? And whether that is anywhere across our county, across our state, across our world, us on given days, or it's around the world, in India or one of these places we're going to be talking about. In Luke 15, this whole thing starts off with the Pharisees being really ticked at Jesus that he's hanging out with people who are not godly. They're not whole, they're not holy, and they don't like it. They really kind of resent him for breaking all their rules and spending time with people who they don't believe are worthy and they would never spend time with. They would never give value and worth to because they're broken like every one of us, right? So they're kind of dogging him for this, and then we head into Luke 15. So it's this tax collectors and other notorious sinners. I love that. Think about that. Not just sinners, but people that everybody's heard about. Not the kind of people that have to say, let me tell you about what I've done, but the kind of people who are like, oh, everybody knows what I've done. Notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. How interesting that he was so loving that notorious sinners who would never come into the presence of a Pharisee loved the holiest man who would ever live. That's kind of crazy. Talk about covenant. This made the Pharisees and teachers of the law, religious law, complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. And remember, eating with people in that day was making covenant with them. So he wasn't just sitting down over, chicken tikka masala and saying, hey, let's share the bill. He was making covenant with people by sitting in their home and eating with them. So Jesus told them this story. Now, this is what I love about this introduction. They accused Jesus of eating and associating with sinners, and Jesus responds with this story, which is actually 3, but supposed to be seen as a whole as 1. And basically what he's saying is, oh, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. He's like, you're upset with me for eating with people that you think are sinners? I'm just about to tell you some stuff that shows you how vehemently I actually pursue them. I'm going to take off running down a road to welcome them. I'm going to leave behind all the people who are safe, like what you think you are, and I'm going to go looking for them. I am going to outrageously show you right now. You have no idea how far I'm willing to go to find these people. You can be really ticked in just a minute. Jesus is just awesome. He just doesn't even care. So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who aren't righteous and haven't strayed away. And this is the first thing we learn about the seeker. He prioritizes rescuing the lost. Now, I don't mean he just makes it important. I mean he prioritizes it over shepherding the people who are right there, right? He makes a point to say, when you're out in the wilderness, way out in the far country, remember we talked about last week, sometimes he's talking about when they're right there, and sometimes he's talking about when he takes the sheep way out and has to build the enclosure and protect them from the wolf and stuff like that. When they're way out in the middle of nowhere and one sheep wanders off, he leaves the others. Now, think about it for a second. Doesn't that make you think the others could be in a little bit of danger? Like the shepherd's not around to defend them. What if a wolf comes and attacks them? Jesus goes out of his way to say, it's not just important to me. Like when I get to it, the first opportunity I have, and all these sheep are okay, I'm going to take off and find it. It's like he goes away. He vehemently pursues. He turns away. What that word means. He turns away from these safe ones and he goes and finds the one that's lost. Remember what I said last week? This was Cadence's favorite part. That when a sheep is unsafe or is wandered off or is scared, it just starts bleeding. Now he thought I meant bleeding, so it was a very interesting discussion. But bleating is the word. They start like crazy, going crazy, calling out for the shepherd. And obviously, enemy could find them before the shepherd. So the shepherd takes off running for the sheep, knowing it has no defense mechanisms whatsoever except the shepherd's staff. The one defense mechanism that a sheep has, which does not even belong to it, goes after him with all of his heart and all speed, leaving behind the other ones. Think about what he's saying there. Think about, he could have found some way to say that without making it such a stark difference between the safe ones. Okay, you guys are all got each other at least, If you get picked off, not all of you. But one has wandered off and is scared somewhere and lonely and bleeding its little heart out. And something's going to find it if I don't get there, so I'm going to go find that one. He prioritizes rescuing the lost. Now take a look. I know last week I mentioned this about the shepherd, but here's a picture of just a normal Middle Eastern shepherd. I mean, this is pretty much what the terrain would look like. We think of like flat plains that are very, very green. Jillian went to Israel this year and she's like, oh, it doesn't look like that. It looks like a desert in half of the places. They've got to really go find pasture. And this is a sheep that found itself in one of those spots where it was so terrified that they say that its legs kind of turn into rubber. It can't even stand up and walk home. The shepherd has to put it on its shoulders. This is why we see so many images, so many paintings, so many sculptures, especially in the first 100 years, but in the first 300 years of the church. This was the most common way people referred to Jesus as the Good Shepherd. All the art, all the stuff was like this. And look how big that sheep is. I mean, that doesn't seem that easy or that light. You know what I'm saying? The guy's just like, well, it's what I do to get the sheep back. It's so scared and worthless. I mean, seriously, like at some point, just get up and walk for yourself. The sheep can't even do that. And yet the shepherd is joyful. What does it say? When he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. He doesn't even mind the inconvenience. He's found the thing that he was looking for. That is the heart of our seeker, going after something that's lost. Both us, which should inspire gratitude, and all those people out there who still don't know them, who are wandering around without any kind of shepherd, at any point ready to get picked off by some enemy. Not their fault. It's not because they're bad. We're all the same, right? It's because we have a shepherd that's going to come in and knock out some enemy as soon as it comes around. They don't. I love the way that, this shepherd could say, you know what? Moron sheep. The whole flock is here, and this one decides to take off somewhere. It's his own fault. Oh, well, 100. Okay, this is one of those shepherds that's got 100 to care for. Probably not all that easy to do. God never looks at us like that. Well, you know what? Got yourself into this mess. Oh, well, figure out a way. He goes and looks for us. He goes and finds us. He takes the crook of his staff and pulls us gently out and carries us home on his shoulders so that he can have the full flock that he wants. He wants all of us, right? He wants every child. He wants every person he's ever created to be part of the family. And he won't stop until he has that. Now, we all have a choice. So some people choose to stay alone and scared under a rock. Okay, can't do anything. But he's going to go pursue them. He's going to go find them. We go to the next parable. It's kind of a story of the lost coin. So Jesus goes on from this. He's telling this story, which is really all these three. Bam, bam, bam. The only time he really does this, where he gives you like shotgun. No, let me just not give you one and let's mull it over for hours and hours, which he did with his disciples at least, if not the crowds after. Bam, bam, bam. Not going to give you any break because he's got a point to make. And the point that he makes in the first one is he could have talked about a lost thing kind of closer to home. He specifically talks about it far away. Out in the middle of far away country, something gets lost and the shepherd is going to go way out there and find it. Then he goes to this next one, the woman who lost a coin. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she will call in her friends and neighbors and say, "Rejoice with me because I have found my lost coin." In the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. This is what we learn from the second story about him. He seeks the lost with urgency. Now before he said 1 out of 100. Now it's 1 out of 10. She's lost one of her 10 coins. And in some of the pictures that I've seen that try to depict this in like the Jesus stories, movies, it's a ring around her like headdress that has coins, and she's like, where's my other coin? And she goes crazy trying to find it. And there's a picture there's a lot of pictures of these things, but this is the one that I like the most, where she's sweeping, she's got a light. Again, this is not where you just flick them on and go, clap her. All the lights come on, and she is looking everywhere. She's sweeping her floor. She's getting things out of the way. She is actively going and looking for it. She's not just like, oh, bummer. I wonder where that coin's probably going to turn up someday. She goes and works hard for this. She is working really hard to find this lost coin. And here's the thing that I figure out when I'm reading through these stories about the seeker. It's not the lost thing that's desperate, obviously. In this story, it's an inanimate object. It's the seeker who is desperate to find what he's lost. Is that crazy? When we think about that in terms of God? God is desperate to find us. There's urgency with which he goes out and looks for the lost things. But it's not need that drives him, as it would be for us if we had lost something like a gold coin. It's love. It's just pure love. He doesn't need us, but he loves us. And he wants us back. Now he makes a point to say, and again, he could have said she went out to the market and lost a coin. He makes a point to say she lost it at home. Because he's setting up with these two stories in the beginning, the last story that he's just about to tell, about 2 lost sons. Now, the story of 2 lost sons is usually called the story of the prodigal son, but that's not very accurate because Jesus is specifically talking about two sons, and both of them are lost. So when we get our eyes just on the one prodigal son, which is usually the younger one we're looking at, we miss the point of the story. We miss who he's talking to. We miss why he doesn't wrap it up at the end and tell us what happened. So we're going to read through that one again, but just keep in mind, he's setting all this up for this last clincher. And this is a really interesting thing that I learned as I was studying the shepherd thing last week. In the Psalms, God is spoken of several different ways. One, you know, if you've read very much of them, is a fortress, a stronghold, right? Something to come into. Never in the New Testament do you find God spoken of that way. Is that interesting? That doesn't mean it's not applicable or we shouldn't read it. It's just, we just don't find him spoken of that way, partially maybe because it might take away for us sometimes the urgency, right, of what we're supposed to do. The other three things that we see God mentioned as in the Old Testament, I don't have time to mention all the scriptures, but it's a fascinating study. A good woman, a shepherd, and a father. And we see Jesus using those exact three things right here in this story, which just shows his brilliance, you know? And the spot of the moment, he just pulls, he draws from this, he's showing who God is through all of this stuff. Just unbelievably brilliant. So we're going to read the story of the two lost sons to illustrate the point further. Okay, so remember, it's connected to the other two stories, but he's just going a little further. Jesus told them this story. A man had two sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now, before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Now, if you know anything about the story, you've heard this 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it in case you don't know it. You do not do this in that day. You cannot get your inheritance before your father is dead. That's not the way it worked. Now, for us, it might be like, hey, Pops, deposit a little more in the bank account. That's not what this meant. This was like whatever you have worked for your entire life, the legacy that multiple generations before you have laid down. I want all that now. I don't want to wait until you die. And by the way, I don't want to be with you. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to take all this money. I'm going to go somewhere else and use it. The most ultimately selfish thing and hurtful thing this young man could do. A few days later, this younger son packed up all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land. Ooh, no margin. And he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. Clearly a Gentile farmer, which we'll factor in later. Jesus is very good at pointing out all these tiny little things, because a Jewish farmer will not have pigs. So he spent all his money in Gentile land, which is a no-no to Jews at this time in history. He persuades a local farmer to hire him, and then he goes and feeds pigs. Big no-no for Jews. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. But no one gave him anything. All his friends somehow disappeared. It's like a young woman we met shortly after moving here. Had a lot of friends, and then she got pregnant. And guess what? She couldn't go out drinking anymore, and she literally looked around and nobody was around anymore, right? I think Eric had met her one time, and she called to ask if he would, she was like, I'm so sorry. I should not be asking you this, blah, blah. She went on and on and on to apologize and said, could you go get me some crackers and some 7-Up? I am so sick right now. And none of my friends are answering their phone because they're all out partying, and they really just don't care about me anymore. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and is now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So the party began. I should say the NLT got this a little wrong on that return. It actually doesn't say that at all. Jesus could have said many places in the story that he returned. He makes a specific point to always be pointing to the son as a new creation when he comes back. Not that the same son has returned, but that he was lost and he's found now, which is an interesting distinction. So the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard the music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. "Your brother is back," he was told, "and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return." The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, "All these years I've slaved for you." Whew! There's a little bit of attitude coming out there. That's what you were doing all this time. You were slaving for me. And never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, not my brother, when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, "Look, dear son." Wow. Talk about a graceful father. "You have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. For your brother was dead." He's reminding him, he's not my son, he's your brother. That's how you should be looking at him. "Your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, and now he is found." This is such an important story throughout church history. When I went looking for art about it, it was like thousands just of stained glass. It's called the gospel within the gospel, often, this story, right? And this is another thing we learn about the seeker from this story. He always initiates covenant. He always initiates covenant by extending a costly demonstration of unexpected love. It is always costly to him, and he always goes first. Let's unpack it a little bit. How many different ways the Father shows grace to these two sons? First, if someone had come and talked to a Middle Eastern patriarch in that day, the way his younger son did, even being bold enough to ask for his inheritance, the way they went about this was to take their left hand, which is the worst one, and the back of it, which is the worst side, and smack that kid across the face as hard as they can and say, "Get out," and never come back. You were never to be in my presence again. There's a man that I was kind of like listening to on this. He studied in the Middle East for decades, and he finally found a student. He had a student that this had happened to in his family. A brother had come to his father and said, "Can I have my inheritance now?" And he said it took them 5 years of begging their father just to get him in the same room with the young man again. You don't do this. You don't go and say, I want to go sell all your stuff, because they don't just have money sitting in a bank somewhere. It's all in land. And it's all in land that their family has owned for generations. And it cost granddaddy something to keep that vineyard, when everything was going to pot and there was a famine, and he worked his tail off to keep it. It's not the same as, the way we do things today. This is family money and land. The boy had to go and sell off his father's land to get the money to go. I mean, think of that. Think of how public this humiliation became. It wasn't just an argument. I mean, it was in the beginning, but then eventually the entire community knows of this disgrace. And the father still allows it. That's grace. He allows him to sell his land, to say goodbye to things that mattered, that he would never maybe get back, and watches him walk off knowing the entire time he's going to waste it. Why do you think the father was watching for him? He knows he's coming back. He knows he's going to fail. There's no way this kid is going to make it. After a while, you run out of money. You know what I'm saying? Right? You got to have land. That's how land makes money. In this day, there's no other way to make money. He's just going to take it. He's going to spend it all. That's what prodigal means. Spendthrift, spender, waster. It doesn't mean the one who comes back. That's why we think this story is about the prodigal son. The prodigal part is when he spends everything. So much grace. He shows grace again when the young man comes home. So in their community, they had this cutting off ceremony. If anybody ever went away and did certain things, and one of the things that was a big, big no-no and was going to get you tossed out of the community forever, was to go waste your family's wealth among Gentiles. Again, why do you think Jesus threw in that he was feeding pigs? That's what this guy did. And so if he came home, what he should have been expected to be greeted with was a cutting off ceremony where people come and they do a bunch of big loud things, but basically at the end of it, everybody's instructed to never talk to this guy again. He is never getting a job. He is never being welcomed into anybody's home. Okay, again, it's not just like it's personal. The whole community takes it as an affront when something like this happens. He's getting cut off from the community. He knows that's what he's going back to. And the father knows if he comes back, that's what he's coming back to. And he allows him to come home. He knows he's the only one who's going to be able to extend that guy grace. And he's the one that the sin was against. Talk about grace. And then here's another little ditty for you on how this Father is graceful. The Son wasn't really even repentant. Now this is a big thing. A lot of people assume that when it says he came to his senses, that he repented, but that's not what it says. There's only one other time this is used in the entire Bible, the same phrase, he came to his senses. And it's from Acts 12:11. Peter is in jail, an angel gets him out, he thinks he's in a dream, and he wakes up. When he comes to his senses in the middle of a village, he figures out he's been delivered from jail. That's the only one place we see. That's not about repentance. And there's a lot of words Jesus could have used if he meant to say the young man repented. He didn't repent, he just came to his senses and was like, why am I starving? He's still all about the food. He's still all about the money. All he knows is nobody's going to give me a job, but maybe my Father will. Obviously, he knows his character enough to know if I go back, maybe he'll extend grace to me. But he's not repentant. When he says, I have sinned against God and against you, again, this phrase is not used often in the Bible. And the major time it's used in the past is when Pharaoh says it to Moses after the 8th plague. He says, I've sinned against God and against you. Please forgive me. Have God lift the plague. I'll be a good boy. Now we know he wasn't sincere, right? He was trying to manipulate Moses, which he did. He didn't do it. That's why there are 10 plagues, right? Didn't work out. Jesus specifically uses this language to show he's not sincere. He's trying to manipulate his Father. Even in coming back, he still wants what he wants. He's not repentant. Think about the amount of grace that would take for the Father to extend something to someone who's not even repentant yet. Now, there's a picture here. This is the kind of picture that I saw with the stained glass over and over and over again. It is this prodigal on his knees, or sobbing. His head is in his hands. He's so repentant. He's so torn apart for what he's done for the Father. You notice what he doesn't say? He doesn't say, I'm really sorry I made you look horrible. I'm super sorry I shamed our entire community. What have I done to my brother's inheritance now? I took mine. Now if you give me more, his gets cut. You know what I'm saying? There's only so much to go around. He's already taken his portion. When the Father restores him and makes him an heir again at the end, guess whose portion gets cut? His brother's. He doesn't really acknowledge any of that. This is not what we see in the prodigal son. Actually, just the next picture is more like it. He's just walking home, and guess who's going out to meet him? The Father initiates the covenant. It's not that the Son is repentant and then the Father gives grace. The Son is not repentant when the Father gives grace. It makes me think of Romans 8:5. Here's it 5:8. Can I remember? 5:8. Where it says Jesus died for us while we were still sinners, right? The Father, and Jesus in this story he's kind of making himself the Father. The Father runs out to greet us and says, hey, you don't bother with your speech. Don't do any of that. You were lost and I found you. Will you just let yourself be found? That's your only responsibility here. Your only responsibility here is to give up your plan and to surrender to being found by a loving, gracious Father who's not going to make you pay, who's not going to humiliate you, who's not going to make a big deal out of your disobedience, but is going to put a ring on your finger and sandals on your feet, go find the finest robe. You know whose robe that was? His, the Father's. The finest robe in a house like that was his robe. I'm going to go take my things, I'm going to put them on you because I'm so happy that you're home and you didn't do a single thing to deserve it, not even repent. Now we see the Son repentant. But God is always the one who initiates through a costly demonstration of love. He initiates grace first. That's the kind of seeker we have. That's the kind of seeker we see in this story. One who not only says, yeah, sure, I can forgive you, but you're going to have to work it off. Are you kidding me? Think about what you just did, dude. One that says, forgiven, done. Let's not even think about it. In fact, let's spend more money on you. We're going to go get the calf we've been fattening up, and we're going to kill it, and we're going to invite the entire village, hundreds of people, most likely. That's how the older son heard the party, right? He hears it out in the fields. Talk about a party. He comes in like, whoa, we're having a party? What happened? This is so great. And a servant tells him, how does he say it? When he says, your brother is back, They're celebrating because of his safe return. In the midst of that sentence, he specifically uses the word shalom to say everything has been reconciled. And this is what ticks the brother off. Because he could have had his say with the father if it was just a party and he's like, oh man, that brother came back right in the middle of a party. Whatever. I'll get his ear afterwards. I'll have him kick him out again. We'll get this fixed. This guy should not be here. He shouldn't be part of this family. But the fact that it's already been reconciled, that the father has already extended grace and put the family back together, ticks the brother off. And all of a sudden, his real heart comes out. Instead of slaving away out of service for the father, he's been in a contractual relationship where when he gives something, he expects something back. And this is where we see the second lost son. He's very lost. But what he's been trying to do is be really good to earn it. Whereas the younger brother has been trying to be really bad to earn it. Neither way works. The only way is to accept that we're lost and allow ourselves to be found. Think about the offense of this brother not going into that party. Again, we cannot understand it, but you've got village leaders. You've got the whole community there. You've got very respected people. The patriarch, the father is there as the host and is told, your son won't even come in. Talk about disgrace and disrespect. He should have said, get this kid out of here. You know what? I've had enough of sons today. I'll be like, forget it. Why did I have kids? Are you kidding me? I got to put up with this again? Instead, he disgraces himself. We can't even wrap our heads around how humiliating it must have been to walk outside and go find this kid in some back alley or something, and then to hear him shout at him. It's not even like, I'm really sorry, but I kind of disagree. It's like, are you kidding me? What is your deal? Do you see what this guy's done? Are you an absolute moron? Or has he somehow pulled the wool over your eyes? Because I know what he's doing. And by the way, what about me? Talk about extending grace. And instead of saying, take this guy away and I do not want to see him again until he's cooled off and has a really great apology for me, he begs him, he pleads with him to come in. This is the kind of seeker we have. No matter which way we're lost, he goes looking for us. And he says, even in your unbelievably disgraceful way, how you've just insulted me, and guess what? It's all about the food for you too, apparently. You haven't done this for me. You haven't done this through relationship. You've done because you want your little goat. I mean, nobody is honoring the father, and neither of these sons deserve him. And still we see him seeking after them again and again. He's amazing. It is always him who initiates covenant first. It is always him who is willing to say, whatever it takes. I'm going to be spat upon. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be falsely accused. I'm going to be beaten. I'm going to be dragged away. I'm going to be given this horribly humiliating and excruciatingly painful death. Okay. Because this is the only way to put this family back together again. And that's what Jesus did for us. Just a couple things we learned from all this. One is that he loves to celebrate lost things being found. He loves to celebrate. The found sheep, it says, when he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me because I found my lost sheep. In the same way, there's more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. The found coin. And when she finds it, she will call in her friends and neighbors and say, rejoice with me because I found my lost coin. In the same way, there's joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. The found son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we've been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For the son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost and is now found. So the party began. This is the kind of seeker that we have. He is so desperate for us. And when he finds us, he celebrates. And he wants us to do the same thing. Because in the story with the two lost sons, you know who should have gone looking for the son, the younger? You know whose responsibility it was to put the family back together again? It was the older sons. The older son was the one who should have gone out to that far country and brought his brother back. But because he was so comfortable and he was so bitter and he did everything for himself, he chose not to show compassion. We have a good older brother in Jesus, right? Talk about coming to find us. Leaving heaven to earth, that's a missions trip, right? And he wants us to be like him and go out and find the lost ones. Instead of sitting back and thinking, I'm good, I'm full, I'm happy. Or even worse, oh, look at my problems. Look at everything I have to go through. I can't see anything outside the fog of all my struggle, even though the shepherd wants to give me rest, wants to give me peace, wants to release me from all of this junk and baggage. I am so consumed with myself that I cannot even see that there's a world that he wants to rescue because it's all about me all the time. And so this is the last thing that we learn about the shepherd. He wants us to participate in the mission, which is why we are here talking about this tonight. He wants us to be a part of it. If he just wanted to come save people, he'd just split the skies open and say, hello, I'm God. I don't know why he doesn't. Sometimes I'm like, Jesus, gosh, you could be doing that right now. Make it a whole lot easier and a whole lot better witness than most of us. I know me on most days. Why you gotta use me? I was so grumpy, or I said the wrong thing, or I didn't answer my phone when someone in need happened to call, or whatever. I'm so selfish. I cannot get myself outside of my head sometimes. Why are you trying to use us? I don't know. That's the answer. Oh. But he wants to. He wants to use us. And so now we are the seekers. We are following our rabbi in that. We're drawing people to him, not us, thank goodness. But we're the ones out looking. Keaton, you can go ahead and come up. We're going to take some time tonight for prayer, right? For Sanana of the month. And as always, I'm going to encourage you to stay as long as you want, as long as you feel led. You can go to people around the room and ask for prayer, or you can go to people around the room and offer prayer if you'd like. Or you can sit in your chair, or you can lay down on the floor, or you can grab a Bible from the back, or you can write in your journal, or you can pace in the back as we worship, or whatever you want to do. This is the beauty of just one night a month we get to do this, because, we like to have coffee and hang out and go somewhere after. But tonight we're not going to do that, so that we have time to let some of these things that God's been saying the last few weeks really settle in. What is God saying to me, and what am I going to do about it? What is God saying to me? What am I going to do about it? Guys, every time I leave the county and come back, I realize we are learning how to hear God's voice. There are people who have been Christians for their whole lives that have no idea how to hear God's voice. That's crazy. But it's real. That's what we're doing tonight. We are practicing what it means to hear the shepherd's voice saying, Lila! I know you got a lot of distractions. I know there's a lot of important people. Like they're all more important than God somehow, but I know there's a lot of things that you've got to do, but I'm calling you. It takes practice to hear it, and it's self-control to sit and wait, to come to him and allow him to say whatever he wants to say. So if you have time, if you don't, believe me, if you get up and have to leave, nobody's going to be judging. Nobody cares. Nobody's looking. All right? Grab some coffee. Eric will probably be out in the hallway. If you want to chat on your way out, you can totally do that outside the room. But for this one night, we're just going to turn this room into kind of a sanctuary. And London, you can go ahead and lower the lights. I want to read this last scripture as you're asking tonight what the Lord is saying to you. Just everybody bow your head, close your eyes if you don't mind. I just want to ask tonight, if you are here and you say to yourself, I know that you're talking about the seeker, but I don't know God like that. I've only ever known him as mean and judge, maybe more like what the older brother sounded like tonight. I've never seen him as someone who goes out of his way to pursue me. I don't know that kind of love. I've never known it, but I want to. I'm just going to ask you, if you want to start a journey with the Lord, if you want to give your heart to Christ, whatever that looks like, and believe it is a journey. We are messing up and stumbling our way along the rest of our lives, but we have him as our shepherd, so it's good. If you want to start that tonight, will you just lift up your face and make eye contact with me so that I can pray for you and we can help you as a community. We thank you, God. You're such a good shepherd. You're such a good father. You're such a good seeker. You seek us with urgency, with passion, with love. When we come to you, you don't disgrace us. You don't hold us down. You don't tell us how bad we've been. You just smile and say, finally, you've allowed yourself to be found. That's all I wanted from you. Will you just give up your plan and take on mine? I just want to draw you closer. I just want to make you part of this flock, this imperfect, blemished flock. And I want to be able to be your shepherd. I want to be able to guide you, and I want to be able to love you. Sometimes discipline you. All of those things that a good father does. Thank you, God. As we just head into this time of prayer, I just want to read one more passage from Ezekiel 34, the Good Shepherd, 11 through 16. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search and find my sheep. Search and find. I will be like a shepherd looking for his scattered flock. I will find my sheep and rescue them from all the places where they are scattered on that dark and cloudy day. I will bring them back home to their own land from among the peoples and nations. I will feed them on the mountains of Israel and by the rivers and in all the places where people live. Yes, I will give them good pasture land on the high hills of Israel. There they will lie down in pleasant places and feed in the lush pastures of the hills. I myself will tend my sheep and give them a place to lie down in peace, says the sovereign Lord. I myself. I will search for the lost ones who strayed away, and I will bring them safely home again. I will bandage the injured and strengthen the weak, but I will destroy those who are fat and powerful. I will feed them, yes, I'll feed them justice. Thank you, God, that we are on the receiving end of your grace. None of us are powerful. None of us have anything to offer back. None of us have any righteousness to declare for ourselves. We're all just like those sheep that on a dark and cloudy day kind of ran away in our fear. And you are the good shepherd who sought after us and found us. Thank you. We love you tonight. Whatever you want to speak to us, Lord, if you just want to let us sit with you and enjoy being part of this flock, if you just want to stir up gratitude in us again of what you've done for us, if you want to give us passion and light our hearts on fire for those who don't know you, whatever you want to do tonight, we're yours. We're your sheep, you're our shepherd, and we want to hear your voice. Amen.
Like a hurricane, I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us. the grace in his eyes.